A lot of people when they interviewing, like even like internally, like when you interviewing to try to move up with the company, they just feel like they can apply online. But to me, I feel like you got to stick out. You got to stand
Yeah.
out. Where did you get that gem from? Like, how did you know? Like, this is what I need to do to stick out and be ahead. Or is it just comes down to you wanted it, enough to put yourself out there? Because a lot of people don't put themselves out there and they
Yeah,
miss out on opportunities.
I think it was really a matter of putting myself out there and being assertive. I think that's so important, right?
Yeah.
Because, I'm going to them to let them know, hey, I might not have everything you're looking for now, but let me do the challenge questions because I'm confident that my presentation is going to stack up against a person that, might already be a chief HR officer, right?
Yep.
And I wanted to use that as a use case to not only prove that I can do the work, but also prove to myself if I couldn't, right?
Okay.
Like I love to be humbled as well. Like if it was a situation where, hey, we got a candidate that's better, this is what they did better, here's your area of opportunity, that would have gave me something to work towards in terms of professional development, right?
Yo, what's up, everybody? It's your boy back again with another episode of Big Boss Talk, the podcast. Listen, I don't even have to say it no more. It's top tier everything, top tier guests. We got top tier recommendations. And we have another top tier guest, which is crazy. Small world. Her fiance has been recommended twice. And it's crazy how everything just kind of goes full circle. Didn't even know it. I had her on first, and then next thing you know, he was recommended. But let me get into the guest and introduce you guys. So I have Shaykara Waajid, better known as Shay, age 29, job, she's head of people at Livepeer by day, and she's a serial entrepreneur and investor after 5. So listen, she living a double life. She got that 9 to 5 spirit, but then she got that entrepreneur spirit as well. She has a Bachelors of Criminal Justice from USC, MBA with the concentration in HR management from Winthrop, my hometown, Winthrop Eagles. Let's go. She has 10 years in her profession, so she's been in her profession for almost a decade now. So she has a lot of game, a lot of knowledge, and a lot of wisdom. But Shay, say what's up to the podcast.
Hey, everybody. Thank you for having me. Super excited for the conversation today.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But listen, it won't be big boss talk if we don't get into two truths and a lie. I got to get those statements, a little icebreaker to get the crowd warmed up. So let's get into it.
The first one I'm going to give you is I failed my permit test 3 times before passing. I'm the oldest of 4. And I purchased my first home in 2018.
So purchased first home in 2018. I mean, you had to think about that one. So I think that was kind of true. You had to really conjure that thought up. Failing the permit 3 times. That seems like that's a like my wife did that. So it's like I feel like that's common. Like 3 times. I'm like, maybe it's common, maybe it's not. And then you said you're the oldest of 4, right?
Of 4, yeah.
Purchased your first house in 2018. I'm gonna say, okay, so I'm gonna say number 1, failing 3 times. That's true. That seems like you got a little PTSD from that one. 3 times. Second one, I think that's true as well. Oldest of 4. I'm gonna say the lie is the first home purchase in 2018. You probably did, purchase a home, but 2018, I think the year might be a little off. I'm gonna say that's the lie. You might got me, but we'll rock with it.
I got you. The lie was the permit test 3 times.
Oh, so you passed on the first one.
Yeah.
Okay. Dang, I really put my wife's business out there.
You did. Lord knows I'm about to pick on her about that one.
Hey, listen. I was like, man, dang. Well, I'm sorry. Listen, 3 times, third time's the charm. Okay, cool. And then so oldest of 4. What's it like being an older sibling? Having all those young guys looking up to you.
growing up, it's a lot of pressure because I feel like you get in trouble even when you didn't do nothing. But now that I'm older, it's definitely rewarding because it's like almost like watching your own kids grow up. I feel like I don't have kids yet, so I could be left field, but it's like seeing a baby grow up. You be like, dang, the kids grow up so fast.
I'm telling you, I watched my little brother. So me and my brother like 6 years apart, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
And so just watching him from a baby to now, like about to graduate next year, it's kind of crazy and surreal to really see him doing, you know, what he's doing.
It make you feel old sometimes.
Yeah, like real old. I'm like, dang, I ain't that old, man.
Yeah.
But it is what it is. And so you purchased your first house in 2018. What was that experience like? I know with your business, you kind of, a side business, you help people, you know, with loans and things of that nature. Maybe we'll get into it. We'll get into it afterwards. But what was that like buying that first home?
Honestly, the market probably wasn't as crazy as it is now in 2018, but it was still crazy in Atlanta.
Yeah.
And the reason I said first home is because I definitely want to have a portfolio one day. But as of now, it's still the only home in our portfolio. But my fiance and I closed October 2018. And I want to say we put the home under contract the year prior.
Yeah.
So it was new construction. It was a long timeline. There was a lot of setbacks. I lost my job in the middle of the process. So I almost lost a home loan. It was a lot. But I would do it again, and I'm interested in doing it again. So I think a lot of times you see stuff on social media that'll deter you from even trying. So my advice to people is to try, like at least reach out to a lender, get a pre-approval, and at least try. Don't let what you see online deter you from at least trying.
Yeah, it definitely deters, you know, sometimes us, you know, when we see things, because we actually, you know, the goal was to try to get one by the end of this year. And we've been talking to realtors and lenders, doing the pre-approval, like that, the same steps you just talked about. And I mean, they want everything but your blood type. So it's like, I'm like, man, we just trying to get a home, but you know, they want everything, like, you know, all types of statements from, you know, year ago, 2 years ago, stuff like that. So it's interesting. It can be obviously, you know, overwhelming at times. And, you know, you went through a lot during your process. So I know you just, you know, when you got into it, you was a big sigh of relief. So congratulations to y'all. Congratulations.
And good luck to y'all while y'all are on that journey. I know you'll close eventually.
Yeah,
and that's what I tell everybody. Like, don't get defeated by like an offer not being accepted, or, you know, don't fall in love with a home until you got it under contract. That's what I always tell people. And from there, it should be smooth sailing.
Sounds good. That's good advice. So now what we do is we got, it's a new segment that I got. It's called Hot Picks. And it's like 4 questions. Very random, it's just very nice just to kind of get to know you a little bit. But the first question is, I see that you do travel, right? I try to do a little research before I sit down with people, and it seems like you guys like to travel. You guys like to have fun, a vibe. What's the best place you visited that offers you those vibes? And then, you know, once you tell me the place, give me, you know, what establishment, you know, you had the most fun at.
I'm gonna say, oh man, I'm torn between Montego Bay and Dubai.
Ooh.
Dubai. I'm gonna go with Dubai. We just went in February. We were there for a week, and the whole trip was a vibe. Like, even though they didn't have all the food my fiance probably was looking for, it definitely was a trip to remember, and I definitely want to go back. And honestly, the establishment that is living rent free in my head is the Gold Sioux. So that's where you find like all the gold for like 50% less than what we're spending here in the U.S. And unfortunately, we waited to go on the last day of our trip, and we realized we needed a whole day to explore. So when I go back, that'll be my first stop, not my last stop.
That's dope, man. I've had a lot of people talk about Dubai, like they went and visited. So it seems like that's a trip that you definitely got to put on the list to go to with definitely. Dubai. And then the next question is, what's a top quality that everyone enjoys about you? Like, what are you known for amongst your friends?
I I honestly would have to say more recently the coin term is if Shay says she's going to do something, consider it done.
Okay.
Like that's just always been something about me. Like once you have my word, you can consider it bond. Like if I say I'm going to do something, it's going to get done.
Facts. We love it. We love it. And the third one is, what is your guilty pleasure? What is something that people don't know, whether it's food, whether it's a snack, what's the guilty pleasure that you have?
Mine is definitely sweets. Anything sweet. I'm talking about ice cream, brownies, hot fudge cakes. It don't matter. I got a terrible sweet tooth.
I love it. Okay, the last one is, if you could do something every day nonstop, what would it be? Besides sleep, it's something that you could do every single day.
Nonstop.
Yep.
Relax. That's what I'm working hard for, to get to a point where I could just relax all day, to be honest.
Okay.
We ain't even got a cap about it.
Just to relax. Cool.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate you answering those questions. And then, we just going to ask the question I always ask. What did young Shay want to be growing up? Obviously, you're very well decorated as far as having your BA, having your master's, also being a serial entrepreneur. But, being young, you might have had something different in your mind. What did you want to be growing up?
Mine was a lawyer, and I literally said that from the time I was probably like 6 all the way up until graduating from USC. So even when I graduated from USC, I thought I was going to law school.
Really? Okay. Yeah. And so then who put that idea, for you to be a lawyer? Did you see something at a young age? Something on TV?
I honestly have no idea. My godfather, my sister's godfather, so he's like best friends with my dad, so we all call him uncle, was a lawyer growing up, and now he owns his own law firm in Charleston. Yeah. So that might have been like the first impression, but I don't vividly remember what it is. Okay. I do remember recognizing that lawyers made money, they kept money, and I wanted money. So it was one of those two, if not a correlation of both. A combination of both.
Money's always in the picture, you know what I'm saying? You always, when young, you're just like, what's going to make the most money for me? And then you just say, all right, I think lawyer is it, or doctor, engineer, whatever the case may be. So going, fast forward and right, you went to college, you thought, as soon as you graduated college, you was going to, be a lawyer. What changed, right? So obviously, you're head of people at Livepeer, but, what changed your direction from, pursuing to continue to be a lawyer?
So it happened literally the last semester, my senior year of college. I was applying to law schools, had finished the LSAT. To my surprise, I did extremely well on the LSAT, and I had actually already paid a seat deposit to go to law school.
Yeah.
And I ended up getting a few job offers and was basically deciding between the fact of if I went to law school, I couldn't work. And here I am, somebody that's worked 30, 40 hours a week since I was 15. And mostly because I had to, I had financial obligations and responsibilities. Yeah. And then there's this job offer that was full-time, 5-figure salary at that time. I'm thinking I'm balling, it would allow me to relocate from Columbia to Charlotte. And in my mind, I'm like, well, I can always get an MBA at night. Yeah. So I ended up going with the second route, which was taking a full-time job, moving to Charlotte. Where I messed up was getting my MBA full-time and working full-time. I do not suggest that. It was a hybrid program, so the classes were at night and or online, but it still kicked my behind. So it only took 2 years. It was accelerated because it was full-time, but in hindsight, that's where I probably made a mistake. I probably should have went part-time.
Gotcha. So obviously you were given a chance. You were in a unusual situation. A lot of times, when I talk to lawyers, they always talk about how, the LSAT, that test is very hard. It took them multiple times to pass. And then kind of that's their only, being a lawyer was their only option. But for you, it's to your surprise, you passed with flying colors. You paid the deposit. You were literally on your way to, being a lawyer. And then next thing you know, you got this second option, and you chose the second option due to obviously the money for one, because you always been working, and then the location of Charlotte. Do you ever regret? I don't want to say regret, but do you ever think about what if you would have chose to go to be a lawyer? Do you regret it?
Absolutely. I think when I got my current job is when it hit me dang, I'm glad I made the decision I made. because in terms of like finances, I feel like I am where I am financially, where I expected to be as a lawyer.
Yeah.
With significantly less student loan debt. Now, don't get me wrong, I still got a lot of student loan debt, but the scenario would be completely different had I went to law school, because I wouldn't have been able to work, right?
Right.
So I often like toy with like what the scenario would look like. But the thing about me that I'm very proud of is I'm gonna make it do what it do or whatever I'm given. So if I would have went to law school, I probably still would have ended up in the same situation versus now. But it would have been a lot more school. I feel like I would have had a lot less life experiences, because I would have been more bogged down in school. And then it's the bar. Like, you're not promised to pass the bar. I know a few people that struggle with that. So I'm like, I'll be damned if I go to school 4 years, can't work, get out, and can't pass the bar. So it's
like, nah, it was too many, like, that. You know, when you look at the pros and the cons, it's like the cons, you know, the cons over here is a little bit outweighing. But, you know, like you said, you know, whatever situation you in, you know, you would have made it do what it do. And you know, you got to kind of have that feeling, you know, personally, you know, for people that's watching, listening, you know, things happen for a reason. God don't make mistakes, you know what I'm saying? And you choose those decisions based on how you feel at that particular time. And when you in those situations, you gotta live with the choices and never regret, and just make the best out of everything. So I think you definitely dropped the bar, you know, with just giving us that explanation, that scenario. So then, you know, now that we know, you know, what changed, you know, obviously, you know, wanting to be a lawyer to where you are now, we're gonna go back and we're gonna talk about, obviously, what was your childhood like, you know, growing up, you know, because you a serial entrepreneur. Like, a lot of times, you know, you had to, you know, people have stories where, you know, I sold candy growing up, or, you know, my parents, you know, started little businesses and things of that nature. Like, what was your childhood like, and where did that entrepreneurial spirit or drive come from?
If I had to describe my childhood in one word, I would say diverse.
Okay.
So I was exposed to a lot at a young age, good and bad.
Gotcha.
But the like key thing from my childhood that I think spilled over into me having an entrepreneur mindset is the fact that I was surrounded by so many entrepreneurs. So my dad owned a commercial janitorial business, and I saw that was the time in our life where he made the most money. So I didn't know numbers, but I knew we was balling when he had his own business versus when he was going to work and working 9 to 5 or crazy hours, right? Yeah. And the one thing I love about my dad is he took any job, even if it was beneath his education, to provide for his family. So I remember when my daddy was driving for Domino's with 2 master's degrees, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. But he had to do what he had to do to provide. And then I also saw where he owned his own business. It might have worked 2 days a week, but we was going shopping every weekend. There's 4 of us. So I got to see that. My mom owned a hair salon most of my life. And so I got to see the behind the scenes on having instant cash flow, but telling Uncle Tom otherwise. So I got to understand that. My aunt owns a multi-million-dollar hair brand, Shaykara Waajid. So, you know, I got to see like different levels of entrepreneurship from a very young age. So that's when I always knew that I probably wouldn't work until I was 60 or near retirement age. Yeah. And I had to have a strategy, or what I like to call an escape plan, right? Yep. So I believe working is important, because I think a lot of people jump into entrepreneurship prematurely and they don't have the tools or skill set necessary to be a full-time entrepreneur. So I'm always the voice that's like, hey, I think you should work full-time until you're ready to make that jump, because being an entrepreneur is not all peaches and cream. You know what I'm saying? Like, there's some months you might make buku money and some months you might not make any. Right. So you got to understand saving and putting aside money for maintenance and operating costs and all that good stuff too. But yeah, I would have to say my childhood introduced me to entrepreneurship very early.
Man, you yelling loud to those, you know, those Twitter people that, you know, they get on people hard, you know, LLC Twitter, like, which I got an LLC, but like you said, prematurely, you know, you want to do things in the right time. You don't want to do it because it's a fad or because you see everybody else doing it. You really want to have a passion for this entrepreneurial stuff, because like you said, there's highs, but then there's lows, and you got to know how to bounce back from them lows and kind of play in the middle a little bit.
Definitely. So, and you got to be smart too. Like, I always tell people, self-employed health insurance is not cheap. So, you know, I know a lot of people that could literally be full-time entrepreneurs if it wasn't for the expense of self-employed insurance. So they're like, well, I'm gonna keep my remote job because, you know, I want to have kids soon and I need the health insurance. And you got to be smart and strategic about what's going on in your life and what your goals are too.
Yeah, no lie. And so glad we was able to hit on that. And when you talked about everybody else being an entrepreneur, man, it's kind of like you was incubated in just entrepreneurship lifestyle, which is cool to see. And it's fascinating to see when people they grew up around it. And then you watch them start their own business and they have a little bit more success than somebody that may not be around that type of lifestyle, only because you can ask the right questions, you know how to, do certain things as far as business, credit, loans, all that good stuff. And so I always see that correlation, and it's neat to see how that works. But talk to me about the decision on going to USC. You from Blythewood, obviously that's home. You know what I'm saying? The Metro, the Met 803. What made you stay in state? Because most people are like, man, I gotta get away from the crib. Mom and dad can't pop up on me. Like, what made you choose USC?
So I feel like from where I'm from, a lot of people either don't go to school at all or they go to Midlands Tech.
Okay.
And then transfer somewhere. No shade, nothing wrong with either or. You can be successful regardless. But if you did go to a 4-year school, you went to USC, Clemson, College of Charleston, or Coastal.
Yep.
Like those was the top 4 that everybody was going to. I've never been a fan of Clemson, always been a fan of USC. So once I got into USC, and I do everything early. So I got early decision, everything. So before Christmas break, I already had my big envelope with yes on the outside. So once I got that, it was a wrap for me. But I did also apply to College of Charleston, Coastal, and I got into those schools too. But USC was my top, so I went there. In terms of out of state, what kept me in state was the cost.
Okay.
My family did not have it like that to where they would be stroking a check for tuition. So I knew I had to go where my scholarships was going to foot the bill, and I would have a nice little refund left over to get my books, pay for rent or whatever else. So again, I try to be strategic in all my decisions. Sometimes I miss the mark, but I was even thinking about that at that age. Like, where can I go to where my life scholarship going foot the bill for tuition, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I didn't even apply to any out-of-state schools. I think I did apply to Chapel Hill just to see, but I knew I wasn't going there.
Man, I mean, that's maturity at a very high level. Like, I know when I'm applying to schools, I wasn't thinking of like the cost or putting that financial burden or stress on like whether my parents or whether it's myself. So it's like for, like I said, like for people that's watching, there's a lot of things that you are saying that can help them in the long run, because when you go into college, all you think about is those 4 years. 4 years. Those are the best 4 years of your life. Sometimes that people say, and then, but you don't think about the aftermath of those 4 years, whether the loans pick up, whether it's, not choosing the right school as far as like your major and stuff like that to be able to get you a job right after school. So you got to really think about that. I will want to ask, did you ever have HBCUs in your mind as far as like an all-black college?
So I'll admit, I honestly was not exposed to HBCUs growing up. I would have to say my probably first exposure to HBCUs was when I got to USC, and me and my line sisters was going to Orangeburg every other night to go to Claflin and South Carolina State. Yep. So I wasn't exposed to HBCUs outside of Drumline, the movie Drumline. Like, I knew it was lit from that, but other than that, I didn't know much about HBCUs. I'm not even gonna lie.
Okay, cool. I mean, the same way for me. Like, I only know HBCUs from Drumline. I had a football scholarship with South Carolina State, but I was like, I don't want to really go. Kind of glad I didn't, because I knew I would have probably got in trouble. Just too much going on. So I was just like, let me just do what's smart for me. What's the biggest advice you can tell somebody that's getting ready to go to college about college? Like, what's something, a pitfall that you can tell them about that they can try to avoid? Because there's a lot.
I think the main thing I try to preach is balance. And actually, we literally just dropped my brother off to USC Upstate last August, and I told him the same exact thing. And it was enjoy college because it goes by fast. And I felt so old saying that, because I remember when everybody was telling me that. But I told him to enjoy college because it goes by fast, but always check in with his priorities. So if that meant one Friday you got to skip a house party because you got a paper coming up, so be it. You can go to the next house party. Trust me, it's always going to be a house party.
Yep.
Or if that means you got to skip out on brunch one Saturday because you need to work some extra hours because you need gas money, whatever the case may be. Mm-hmm. But always recheck in on those priorities. And one cheat code that I gave my brother and my sisters that I did when I was in college that helped me because I knew I was working a lot is every Sunday I would look at my syllabus and see what was coming up that following week.
Yeah.
And I would plan out my week based on that. So, for example, if I knew I had a paper due, I would go ahead and knock it out that Sunday. Like I would literally lock myself in a room on Sunday. And then throughout the week, all I had to do was go to class and work. And all my friends would be like, dang, you don't never have homework. Like you don't ever study. And I'm like, I done did it. You know what I'm saying? So, but you got to create a system that works for you. So I always tell people like, figure out what that system is for you. Create it and stick to it.
Man, shout out to the discipline because your boy ain't got none. I was not doing that. Like I would college, I'm doing everything. Like, you know, obviously, you know, you get the syllabus and I went to a smaller school, so it could be different. When you go to USC, a big school, like, you know, you don't have that one-on-one connection sometimes with that teacher to be able to ask questions. So you really got to focus on, all right, what's the syllabus, what I need to prepare for, things of that nature. We got the syllabus and we was like, okay, cool, that's the syllabus. We just gonna show up to class every week and we're gonna figure out. Teacher gonna tell us.
You sound like our brother.
You know, teacher's gonna tell us, okay, this is what you got coming up this week. You got a test coming up next week. Like, okay, cool. We're gonna study. We're gonna get a little group together. We're gonna work it out. But don't listen to me. That's all I can say.
I'm glad you touched on not having that personal connection though, because another piece of advice I gave him was introduce yourself to all your professors on day one. Mm-hmm. Like I learned that later in college because I started introducing myself when I needed help. And it looks a lot better when you introduce yourself on day one versus when you need to reach out for something.
Yeah.
They're normally impressed because not a lot of people gonna come up to them on day one and say, you know, hey, my name is so-and-so. I'm studying so-and-so. Looking forward to your class. Like it don't have to be a long spiel. Just, you know, introduce yourself. And you'd be surprised by how much grace you get from that versus popping up at the end of the semester when you need that bump from that C to that B.
Man, tell them, please. Because it's been plenty of times I had to go to a professor and be like, man, what can I do for extra credit? And they be like, well, stunned? I mean, nothing. You should have came to me earlier. Yeah. And I'm like, all right, whatever, man. So it's just like you get in those situations that you don't want to be in because you're affecting your GPA, especially if you got a scholarship, right? And you got to keep those certain grade averages. You got to pay attention to that stuff. And you really want to have those teachers on your side. So when it comes down to crunch time, they'll do you a favor because they know, oh, this kid's not playing around.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
Make sure you.
And it's hard to raise a GPA, man. Once it falls below a certain point, it's wrap sometimes.
You kind of got to get all A's, like 2 semesters back to back, just to raise a. You know what I'm saying? Like just raise it up. So it's wild. But the last question about college is, give me your number one greatest experience in college. Whether it's a party, whether it's a situation, just. Give me what's your fondest memory of college that you could go back and relive.
Hey, that's a tough one, man.
It's so many, 4 years.
If I had to name one, I would definitely say pledging and the probate.
Okay.
So shout out to Iota Kai.
Yeah, probate. That environment or that energy is unparalleled. Oh, yeah. Like, because I know you guys are doing your own thing in the back, preparing, doing what you have to do. But for the people that's outside the crowd, when you come in, it's the music. You see the old heads in there, you see that camaraderie. You see a lot of, pride amongst all fraternities and sororities. And it kind of rubs off on you. You be like, dang, you really enjoy that environment. And that was one of my favorite things to do, to go to USC upstate when I was in Greenville. And go watch and to go watch those probates, and Clemson, had a few, and so it was just fun to be able to be inside that environment. Then when everybody comes out, that's a lot of energy in itself, and then it's crazy, it's unparalleled. So
it's like a big party, like a big block party. Man.
I'm telling you, and it's a dope experience to be able to watch that. So congratulations, and then obviously that's a dope memory. So we'll move on. So. We got college out the way. We graduate. We did our time. Did you have a job lined up right after school, or was there like a down period?
So I was very blessed to have a job lined up right after college. I was torn between two different offers before graduating. I ended up deciding to stay with South Carolina DOT.
Okay.
That's who I was working with at the time.
Gotcha.
As a matter of fact, one of my chapter advisors worked there, and that's how I learned about the opportunity, so on and so forth. So networking is important. And then literally maybe at the end of the summer, so, you know, we graduated in June, worked the summer. So at that period, I'm still in Stadium Suites because the lease doesn't end until like August, I think.
Okay.
In July is when I got the job offer to move to Charlotte. And that's when I quit my job at South Carolina DOT,
and you left.
took the job in Charlotte, and I moved to Charlotte at the end of July. But 2015, graduated June of 2015. So life started picking up real fast after that. Because when I walked across the stage, in my mind, I'm like, okay, I'm staying in Columbia. Got the job at South Carolina DOT. When my lease in at Stadium Suites, I'm gonna find something else. And then in a matter of 2 weeks, that whole plan shifted to me relocating to Charlotte. So yeah,
yes,
that's
crazy.
how that went down.
You and Destiny have a very unique situation as far as like graduating and everything happening super fast, you know what I'm saying? Because she was telling me her story, and I was like, man, that you ain't had no time. She was like, you know, I graduated the next day. I was off the, you know, Greenville.
Yeah, she was gone.
Yeah, she was gone. They was like, where you at? You're like, look, I got to go to work. And so,
I was like, dang.
didn't even get to celebrate that much, but you know, things do happen fast. Was there any learning curves? I mean, you had a lot of responsibility and a lot of maturity at a very young age as far as just the financial obligations that you spoke about. But was there any, I guess, learning curves, you know, going into full adulthood, getting that job, anything that, you know, you wish, like, if you knew better, I would do better in situations?
I definitely should have been intentional about building my credit while I was in college. That's one thing in hindsight. I think I definitely a huge area of opportunity, and I didn't see it until I got ready to move to Charlotte. So, you know, I'm trying to get a lease in my name, and because it hadn't been an issue in college, I'm thinking I'm good.
Right.
But when you step outside of college and you're not applying for student housing, you know, those off-campus apartments, it's a totally different situation, right? Because they want to see proof of income and is it a full-time role or contract role and all of that stuff. So I think I should have been a lot more intentional about saving and building my credit. I could have definitely been more intentional about saving.
Okay, that's another gem. Like, credit is huge right now. Credit is almost more important than actual, you know, physical money. You know what I'm saying? Like, your credit will take you places that, you know, sometimes money can't take you. I mean, obviously money can take you a lot of places, but having credit, like when you want to do something, when you want to get something, you want to move, you want to, you know, set up business plans and things like that, credit is your key to getting the keys to the Ferrari.
That's facts.
And if that credit ain't right, you gotta sit back and kind of work at it. And if you don't have the right habits on working at it, it could be a very long process. That's something that I learned, you know, recently, is just like, how do I continue to, you know, get good credit? Luckily, I met a guy at work, and he put me on game about a few things as far as, like, you know, everything he does, he say he try to use credit cards, you know, you know, to pay them off, and, you know, use the points. And he was just like, you know, why you gonna use the physical money anyway? So why not use the credit card, get the points, and then just, you know, just pay the card off, and you just build it on top. So I got a few nuggets along the way. It's crazy when you meet people, just the things that they can help you with and the knowledge that you get from them.
I got that same nugget from a coworker.
Like
a few years ago.
Coworkers. A shout out to the coworkers, man, because we need them.
For real.
And then, so obviously we moved to Charlotte, but let's talk about, how did you get to head of people at Livepeer? What was the journey like to get into the role that you're in now? Tell me about that.
That's a good one. I'm gonna try to make it a condensed version for purposes of the podcast. So we moved to Charlotte. I'm at Randstad. I'm a corporate recruiter. And literally 8 months after being in that role, my branch closes down. They completely consolidated our function of the business. So we were a offshore accounts branch, which means we got everything that wasn't mapped already to a particular branch. So I was staffing roles anywhere from IT with Google to warehouse workers at Wells Fargo. Like, it was a wide range. So that was my first experience of a layoff. So I'm like, wow, I done moved to Charlotte. This is when I'm first like, dang, should I went to law school?
You thinking.
And when my manager called me in the office to let me know, she told me about a severance package. So that's when I learned about all of that. Mm-hmm. So even though I wasn't there a year, they took very good care of me. And she knew about somebody that was hiring for an HR operations manager.
Okay.
So at this time in my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to get that job. I've been a corporate recruiter for 8 months, fresh out of college. You know what I'm saying? But she felt very confident in my ability based on us working together. So she put in a referral. Had about 3 or 4 interviews, ended up getting a job.
Shout out.
And I literally started 2 weeks after my last day with Ronstadt. So during that 2-week period of interviewing, I was stressed out because I was like, I ain't trying to blow through my savings. You know what I'm saying? But it's crazy because it ended up being a paid vacation because I had the severance.
Yep.
They paid me out my PTO, and then I started my new job 2 weeks later. And that jump right there alone was like $20,000 to $30,000 a year change in salary.
Wow.
So I'm like, okay. And it was fully remote.
What a blessing.
I was like, God is good. So I'm like, okay. So I done shifted from being in the office, like, got to be at your desk at 8. Mm-hmm. Don't leave a moment before 5.
Yeah.
Driving to Winthrop at night to do my MBA classes, being in traffic for about an hour. Then coming back home pissed off because I done missed the first half of Scandal. To now having this fully remote role that's paying me more. So it made it even more conducive for me to finish up my MBA. So I finished up my MBA. I stayed at that job for about 2 years, maybe almost 2 years.
Okay.
And when I graduated, my aunt reached out to me and was like, what you think about moving to Atlanta? And I had always said I would never, ever move to Atlanta. I hated the traffic. Wasn't a fan of it. So I'm like, I don't know about that. She told me what she wanted to offer me. Said she would pay for me to move. And I was like, shit, why not? You know what I'm saying?
That money started talking.
So I graduated in May and I moved to Atlanta in June. Literally cover all the expenses, even like transferring my tags, the U-Haul, all
everything.
Of that. So movers, all of that. So I'm in Atlanta. Got bamboozled from an apartment website. I tell everybody, go visit the apartment. Don't rely on pictures. I had got so comfortable from being in the Carolinas that I was like, okay, these pictures look good. So I signed a lease online. By now, my credit's solid. So I was able to do what I needed to do virtually.
Yeah.
And when I got there, it was not luxury.
Oh my God. What was it like? Give me a picture.
It wasn't the slums, but it was like, it was basic as hell. And the pictures made it look like it was luxury. You know what I'm saying? So they got this nice basketball court. I get there, it need to be repainted. I'm like, man, so.
It's janky promoters, man. Janky promoters.
Hey, I had already signed a 12-month lease, so it was what it was. So.
Right.
Got moved in there, worked with my aunt for probably about a year and a half.
Okay.
Left that job in the process of purchasing my home. And really that opportunity showed me the importance of work-life balance. Okay. I think a lot of times when you work with family, there are no barriers or boundaries to like, okay, I'm not going to reach out after midnight. So when stuff popped off and stuff was going on, I was getting a phone call or a text because I was a niece. It wasn't like, employing somebody else.
Relationship.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. Now I will say in hindsight, I also learned that it's important to set those boundaries in the beginning. Because if you don't, it's hard to get upset later and try to enforce them. So that was on me as well. But left that opportunity and ended up getting a position with Women Who Code, which is a global nonprofit organization working in global operations. Okay. So at this point, I was able to utilize all of my HR, marketing, business, recruitment experience and cultivate it into one role. So I was super excited about that. The role was pretty hybrid, majority remote. We only had to go in the office 2 days a week. And then when COVID hit, we didn't have to go in the office at all. So
gotcha.
I was there 3 years. I was there 3 years. That was my longest stint in my career. And when I got near the end of my time there, I had already been promoted 3 times. So I went from global business manager to, I went from operations manager to global business operations manager to senior people operations manager. Okay. So I got back into people operations.
Yep.
And there was a opportunity for them to hire for a chief HR officer, right?
Okay.
Mind you, we're a small team, so it's not like I'm going up for a chief HR officer at Google, right? I always tell people, be realistic about, what you're going up against. We had a team that was probably no bigger than 20. I had managed teams bigger than that, et cetera, et cetera. Had done many things that was outside of my scope of work, showed my value. So instead of just saying I'm gonna apply for the role, I went directly to senior management ahead of the role even posting, let them know my intent to go for that role, and also told them that even if I was not the right fit, I wanted to be a part of the challenge questions, because they did challenge scenarios to basically eliminate unconscious bias, which is something I loved about the organization.
You hit on something as far as going to the senior management before the role even posted. Like, a lot of people when they interviewing, like even like internally, like when you interviewing to try to move up with the company, they just feel like they can apply online. But you know, to me, I feel like you got to stick out. You got to stand out. You know, where did you get that gem from? Like, how did you know, like, this is what I need to do to stick out and be ahead? Or is it just comes down to you wanted it, you know, enough to put yourself out there? Because a lot of people don't put themselves out there and they miss out on opportunities.
I think it was really a matter of putting myself out there and being assertive. I think that's so important, right? Because, you know, I'm going to them to let them know, hey, I might not have everything you're looking for now, but let me do the challenge questions, because I'm confident that my presentation is going to stack up against a person that, you know, might already be a chief HR officer, right? And I wanted to use that as a use case to not only prove that I can do the work, but also prove to myself if I couldn't, right? Like, I love to be humbled as well. Like, if it was a situation where, hey, we got a candidate that's better, this is what they did better, here's your area of opportunity, that would have gave me something to work towards in terms of professional development, right?
Got you.
So it was also a way for me to not only put myself out there, but also check myself if I needed to be checked. You know what I mean?
That
so
makes sense.
it was a two-way street, you know, like, here I am, put myself out there, but do let me know if, you know, the results are that I'm actually subpar and don't amount up. Because I think that's important for people to know, right? We're told to be confident and assertive, but a lot of times the confidence doesn't match the skill set. So that's one thing I always try to be intentional about, is that my confidence aligns with my skill set and that I talk, you know, I'm walking what I talk. So that was definitely the motivation behind that. But long story short, they hired somebody for that role without posting it, and they didn't do the challenge questions, so I wasn't invited to do the challenge questions. And instead of keeping it real with me, I got a fluff response.
As always.
And I'm the type of person where I'll play the game. So I don't even think they knew that I read through that and that I was pissed off. Because I continue to do my job. I continue to do it well. I continue to show up with a smile. I continue to do things beyond my scope of work. But behind the scenes, I was also looking for other opportunities. I got a friend that likes to say shit or get off the pot. And ever since she said that, it stuck with me. Shout out to Lex. But it's true. You know what I mean? Like, if you come home, let's say you come home to Maya and you like, I hate my job, like, they get on my nerves, and you find yourself saying this every day. At some point, it's like, all right, what you gonna do about it? Like,
how you gonna move?
Exactly. If you're gonna keep going and hating it, or you gonna bust a move. And ultimately, that's what shit or get off the pot means. Like, if you don't like something, what are you gonna do about it as the resolve? You know what I'm saying? So for me, it was find another opportunity, because I'm not exactly in a situation where I could just be quitting jobs and chilling at the house. You know what I'm saying? So I applied to a lot of opportunities, and this time I was very picky and intentional about where I went next, because I wasn't in a situation where I desperately needed another job.
How dope is that?
So, and I know I instantly noticed the change in my mindset versus being in a situation where I'm laid off and I need a job, right? And so you realize it puts you in a space to be more picky. And that's when I got intentional about financial freedom too. Because I'm like, if your savings where it need to be, you got the fuck you funds to tell a job, fuck you and quit. You know what I'm saying? So that experience alone changed my perspective on a lot of things financially, career-wise, professionally, all of the above. So ultimately I ended up getting, I think, three different offers. And I ended up accepting the role with Livepeer because I was really, really attracted to how laid back the senior management was. Like, I remember my first call with the CEO, he was in a t-shirt chilling, you know, and I'm in a button up, and he let me know off rip, like, you can wear a t-shirt. They all about productivity, getting work done, no politics. And that's something I value. And we all work remotely. We're a global, fully distributed organization. So nobody is in a particular office. So yeah. And they took a chance on me. You know what I'm saying? I hadn't technically, based on my resume, I didn't have any director level roles or head of roles. And they took a chance on me with the head of people role. And I was able to jump in and provide impact and show my value in the first 30 days. And I think it's going to be up from there. So we'll see. Had a promising conversation today with my boss. So
let's go, man. That's dope, man. I think, you hit on so much as far as like with the journey. Number one, to, for people that's watching, listening, don't be scared. Take chances, take risks. A lot of people are very, we get comfortable. That's all that's how I want to put it, right? We get comfortable. We making our little change. We don't really like to, stir up the pot. I'm good with making what I'm making. I can live off that. I can sustain off that. But it's so much more. It's so much more out there for us if we just put ourselves out there to receive it. You got to be in a place to receive it and really have a little bit of courage and faith in yourself that you can go out there and get it done. Your story alone just lets you know, like, going from, job to job and, being in a situation where I got a job, I really don't need you. So, that mindset alone gives you way more confidence. Like I did an interview probably 2 months, I want to say about 2 months ago. And, I had a job. I really didn't need to leave my job. I was just looking for like, maybe I can get a little bump, maybe it's a little bit more money. But the number one thing was I'm not going to take the bump for more duties. You see what I'm saying? Like, I'm not going to stress myself out for another, $15,000, $20,000 bump, because.
And I'm glad you said that, because I know so many people that'll make that move. And I'm like, you didn't think that through, because after taxes, you barely going to see that. So when I tell people to do the math, I'm like, make sure it's a substantial bump and that you're aligned with the scope of work, because a lot of people don't pay attention to that. They see the number, they see it's higher, and they like, oh, I'm quitting my job and going there. And you don't left a cozy situation with a good work-life balance to go somewhere where you stressed out for an extra $500 in your paycheck.
It ain't. It just the math ain't mathing. You know what I'm saying?
So I tell people, be careful with that. You got to be careful with that one.
Facts, and you got to be careful. But if you in a situation where you need a job, by all means, take the job.
Definitely.
You see what I'm saying?
Like,
but for the situation that we were placed in, we had a job. So it's like when you got that situation, you want to do your due diligence, and this is where they don't interview me, I interview them. Like,
that's so important.
What management like? How do we get in schedule? Like, what does productivity look like? How is that looked at? How is that value? If I don't produce, what is the repercussions? Like, all that stuff I'm asking because I'm trying to figure out how far can I push the envelope to just barely do my job and get this paycheck. To be honest, like, I'm not here to be working my butt off.
You got your own thing going on too, so you need to know if it's going to be conducive for the flexibility you need. You know what I'm saying? I think that's so important.
Exactly. And so your story alone, you hit on a lot of just different gems that I think people can pick up on, and a lot of people can just relate to in general. And I just always want to tell people, like, it's okay that things change. Just try to adapt to the change and move forward. One of the couple of last question I do want to ask is, what makes you good at your job? You know what I'm saying? Like, what type of person, if a little girl or boy was watching you and they wanted to do what you do, what would they need to like to be able to, enjoy this job? Or what skills do they need to really be exceptional? Obviously, they can't be Shay, because you offer something different, right? They can copy, but the pace gonna look a little different. But as far as skill set goes, fundamentals, I
got you. So one thing I will say is HR is very broad. So you got everything from benefits and payroll to employee engagement to compliance. So the one thing I always say is, like, find a niche that you really enjoy, unless you're going into a generalist role where you need to know a little bit about everything. In terms of skill sets needed, attention to detail is very important. So you have to be somebody that doesn't mind tedious tasks. And when I say tedious, something that seems like a small task, but it might take you an hour or two to do because you have to pay attention to detail, right? So something like sending out an offer letter or setting up a equity plan or a token incentive plan, you know what I mean? Writing agreements, those tedious type tasks, which is something I had already been attracted to, because remember, I wanted to be a lawyer. So that compliance piece was already something that I was passionate about. Caring about people. I'm very intentional about putting people before numbers and business metrics, because at the end of the day, if the people aren't happy, you don't have an organization and nothing is getting produced. No matter what you're selling, it's not getting done without the people. So being somebody that genuinely cares about people, and you're able to have tough conversations, because when you're dealing with people, tough things are going to come up. I mean, you got sexual harassment, you got people that'll quit, you'll have termination. So being somebody that can be flexible with the type of conversations you're going to have with people. And it probably was even tougher when people were in the office, right? I remember having to have conversations with people about odor. You know, I'm grown. I didn't think I was going to have to consult somebody about,
that's wild.
You know, workplace aroma. But yeah, you got to be comfortable to have uncomfortable conversations.
Okay.
Honestly, I think those are the tops. The tops. Attention to detail, being comfortable with anything that comes at you. So you got to be flexible, having that flexibility and adaptability. The rest is learned behavior, or something you'll learn over time.
For sure. And then taking a role like that, did a lot of things that you knew already going into it, or they kind of teach you along, you know, because obviously every processes are different. Like that, people are scared of the requirements, like you need to have all this, but sometimes people get in there and they meet half of the requirements, but they excel at the job and they learn on the job.
That's a good one, because I always, like, up until now, I've always told people, don't get hung up on all the requirements you see. Don't feel like you got to check every box. Apply if you think you can do the job. And I still believe in that, but I think it's levels to it, right? So, for example, the role I got out of college, that was something anybody could have jumped into and learned while they were there. Whereas the role I have now, you have to have that skill set and the fundamentals, at least, to be able to do what you need to do, because there's limited or little to no guidance, right? And I work at a startup company, so nobody has time to hold your hand and walk you through things. You got to be able to jump in with an entrepreneurial mindset. That's something we're intentional about hiring. We like to hire people with entrepreneurial mindsets. And it's because we know that we don't have the time to hold their hand. They got to be able to jump in, acknowledge the issue, resolve it on their own, and operationalize it from there. So those were all things I was very good at. So I would say if somebody already has that instilled in them, like personality wise, they definitely could have jumped in and done it, right?
No doubt.
Probably would have took a lot of Google, and trust me, I still use Google. You know, when I'm unclear about something or I need clarity, I go to Google. So self-sufficiency is number one for me. I think in my role, you have to be very self-sufficient. And you have to be able to take initiative, and always take an initiative, right? So you're leading a whole HR department. It's a startup organization, so a lot of the processes don't exist yet. And so that means you have to create them and implement them.
Gotcha.
So if you're comfortable with all of that, I definitely think anybody can jump in and do it that wants to do it.
Okay, cool. Well, we appreciate that rundown of just everything that you do, how you got there, just the skill set that you must have. I think is key. Exposure leads to expansion. You know what I'm saying? Like, who knew?
Yeah, I like that.
If you got those qualities, like you like tedious jobs, you like things of that nature, put your energy into something. It could be something like this. You know what I'm saying? Versus the typical things that they always tell us. Athlete, rapper, artist, lawyer, doctor, scammer, drug dealer.
They up. Boy.
They listen.
Up.
I'm not hating. I'm just letting you know, like, if it catch up with you, just be ready. Take it on the chin. Exposure leads to expansion, and you are an entrepreneur. So I just want you to list off your businesses that you are involved with, and just kind of give us a brief scenario of what each business does, because I know I have listed down here. We got 3MC Solutions. I did look at the post. I'm not sure you guys are. You're still not taking clients, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Got you. But just talk to me about those businesses that you have, and give us a synopsis of them.
Yeah, absolutely. So 3MC Solutions, that's the handle on Twitter and Instagram. I originally started that as a small consulting business. So the objective was to fill business gaps for small businesses and nonprofits, right? Okay. So, for example, they can't afford $80,000 a year for an HR manager, and they might not even have enough work for a full-time HR manager, but they may need somebody to run payroll every 2 weeks, right? So that might be $10,000 a year versus $80,000. So what I created was a business that could help them fill those gaps by hiring other Black freelancers that could do the work. So I partnered with a CPA who was my LS. She handled all the finance and accounting and so forth and so on. So it really gave me the ability to connect the dots, which is something I like to do for free anyway. Like if I know two people that will be able to collaborate and both benefit, I'm going to connect them. So that's basically what I was doing with 3MC, was getting those small businesses and nonprofits connected to a freelancer that could fill their business gaps. Sometimes it was me, sometimes it wasn't. As of, I think I posted that at the top of this year, maybe in the last year, I'm not taking clients. So I had ended up scaling 3MC to do more B2B work. So that's business to business deals. And I was able to close some 5-figure contracts that took me out of the scope of work to be able to consult with, people one-to-one. And then it's wedding year, so I didn't want to overwhelm myself. So I'm currently in the process of reshaping that. I think I'm going to evolve it to real estate investing. So be on the lookout for that. And then I'm also currently working on a project with 2 of my best friends that will involve a podcast and real estate investing as well. So stay tuned. Follow me on Instagram. We'll see what's to come from that.
I can't wait, man. Listen, Shay, we appreciate you so much for giving us, your time today. Obviously, if you realize it or not, we done hit an hour, and it's just been a smooth conversation. I really picked up a lot from you, and I think the listeners and the viewers are going to really pick up a lot, if they dive in and really want to get this information. But I'm super excited, not only, about your the job that you're at now, but excited about your outside endeavors and getting those going and getting those popping. And then, you and Webb got a big, celebration coming up this year, correct?
Yep, September.
So congratulations. I know that's going to be huge. Enjoy that process and just enjoy it. That's all I can say. Enjoy it because it goes.
About to be broke.
Hey, it goes like this. But it's fun for sure. But whenever if you need us on the show, Big Boss Talk, whenever you get the podcast up and running, whenever you get whatever business up and running, I would love to collaborate with you guys and just kind of, help and spread love wherever I can. So thank you so much. I hope you had a good time.
Thank you. I did. We'll talk soon for sure.
Okay. Sounds good. And then I got your recommendations already, so we're good. You have a good night. And I'll reach out to those recommendations and get them locked in.
All right. Thank you. Have a good night.
All right. You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.